My name is Yugi, and for most of my life, luck treated me like I owed it money. I was the kind of guy who could stand under a clear sky, look up, and somehow get hit in the face by a single bird feather soaked in somebody else's soda. If there were 10 checkout lines at the supermarket, I would pick the one where the cashier suddenly needed a manager. If I bought instant noodles, the seasoning packet would be missing. If I bought 2 instant noodles to avoid that problem, both seasoning packets would somehow be seaweed flavor, which was the one flavor I hated. So when my alarm failed to ring on a Monday morning, I didn't panic. That was normal. I woke up 28 minutes late, saw the time, screamed into my pillow, put my shirt on backward, fixed it, put it on backward again, and ran out of my apartment with one shoe half tied. That was when the first strange thing happened. Normally, missing my bus meant waiting 15 minutes for the next one while my boss practiced new ways to insult me. But the moment I reached the street, the bus I needed rolled to a stop directly in front of me. It wasn't even supposed to stop there. The driver had pulled over because a plastic bag was stuck to his windshield. The door opened. I climbed on. The bag flew away. I stared at the driver. The driver stared at me. Neither of us understood why I had just received private transportation from fate itself. I sat down and found a 100-yen coin under my shoe. That wasn't exactly life-changing. But when you're me, finding money instead of stepping in gum already feels suspicious. I picked it up. Then another coin rolled down the aisle and stopped against my ankle. A little kid 2 seats away pointed at it and told his mother it wasn't his. The driver said it wasn't his either. I looked around like the police might arrest me for being near unexpected prosperity, then slowly pocketed both coins. At work, my boss was waiting near the elevator with his arms folded. I prepared for my execution. Then the fire alarm went off. It wasn't a real fire. Somebody on the 3rd floor had burned a croissant in a toaster oven. The entire building evacuated for 20 minutes. By the time everyone came back, my boss had forgotten I was late because he was too busy yelling about illegal croissant heating. At lunch, I bought a canned coffee from a vending machine. 2 cans dropped. I tapped the glass. Nothing else happened. I looked around. No witnesses. I took both. That evening, the weather report predicted heavy rain. I had no umbrella because I had lost 3 umbrellas that month, including one that somehow disappeared while I was holding it. So I accepted that I was going to get soaked. But every time I stepped outside, the rain stopped. When I entered a store, it started again. When I left, it stopped. This happened 4 times. By the time I got home, I was completely dry, while everybody around me looked like they had escaped from a washing machine. I stood inside my apartment, dripping absolutely nothing onto the floor, and realized something impossible. Today had gone well. Not amazingly well. Not lottery-winning well. Just slightly, unnaturally, offensively well. That night, I wrote down every lucky thing that had happened. The bus, the coins, the fire alarm, the extra coffee, the rain. Then I laughed at myself and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up 1 minute before my alarm. My phone battery was at exactly 1% because I had forgotten to charge it. But the charger cable I thought was broken suddenly worked after I accidentally kicked it. On my walk to work, I found a convenience store coupon for a free breakfast sandwich. When I went inside to use it, the cashier told me the sandwich was part of a promotion and came with a free drink. I chose orange juice. The cap had a tiny code printed underneath it. I entered the code online. I won another orange juice. That was when I started paying attention. The 3rd day was even stranger. A pigeon almost pooped on me, but a gust of wind moved me half a step because my untied shoelace caught on a crack. The pigeon missed me and hit my boss. My boss turned around, furious, ready to blame the nearest living creature. At that exact moment, another pigeon hit him from the other side. He looked up at the sky and apparently decided he was under attack by nature. I walked away before he could remember I existed. By the 4th morning, I had a notebook. By the 5th morning, I had a spreadsheet. By the 6th morning, I had a theory. Every day, I seemed slightly luckier than the day before. Not by much. If I had to guess, I would have said 1%. That number sounded ridiculous, but I needed a number, and 1% felt exactly right. It wasn't enough to turn me into a superhero. It was enough to make a coin land on heads a little more often. Enough to make the elevator arrive when I pressed the button. Enough to make the last dumpling at a restaurant somehow be the biggest dumpling. So I decided to test it. I started with coin flips. 100 flips. 58 heads. That wasn't impossible. The next day, 61 heads. The next day, 62. Then 64. Then I tried guessing which elevator would open first in my office lobby. There were 4 elevators. I got 6 guesses right in a row. Then 8. Then 11. A coworker named Toma noticed me pointing at elevator doors like a low-budget wizard and asked what I was doing. I told him I was practicing intuition. He told me I needed friends. He was probably right, but friends did not have measurable probability, so I ignored him. My next experiment involved scratch cards. I bought one. I won 500 yen. I used that money to buy 2 more. One lost. One won 1,000. That was enough for me to stop. Because I wasn't trying to gamble my rent. I was trying to understand whether the universe had accidentally put me on some kind of promotional plan. The answer became obvious over the next few weeks. My luck really was increasing. Every single day. I didn't know why. There was no glowing system window. No mysterious grandfather. No ancient ring. No truck sending me to another world. I was still Yugi. Still underpaid. Still living in an apartment where the bathroom light flickered whenever my neighbor used his microwave. But reality had started leaning toward me. At first it leaned politely. Then it started leaning like it was drunk. Around day 20, I stopped missing trains. Not usually. Not mostly. I literally stopped missing them. If I arrived late, the train was late too. If I arrived early, the train came early. Once I reached the platform after the doors closed, and before I could sigh, a man's scarf got caught between the doors. The conductor reopened them. The man pulled his scarf free and I walked on. I felt bad for the scarf. Not bad enough to stay behind. Around day 30, I noticed my food had become suspiciously perfect. Every avocado I bought was ripe. Every egg I cracked had a double yolk. Every microwave meal heated evenly. That last one scared me more than anything else. I had never seen noodles heat evenly in a microwave. I stared at the bowl for almost a full minute, wondering whether I had died. Then I burned my tongue, which proved I was still alive. I started making tiny bets with Toma. Nothing serious. Which side of the toast would land up if he dropped it? Whether the vending machine would accept his bent coin? Which pigeon would take off first? Whether our boss would say the word synergy before lunch? I won so often that Toma became convinced I was cheating. He started designing bets specifically to stop me. He put 3 paper cups on a table, hid a coin under one, shuffled them while I looked away, then asked me to choose. I tapped the middle cup. The coin was there. He did it again. I chose the left. Correct. Then he took me into the break room, borrowed 10 identical sugar packets, marked one with a pen, mixed them inside a bag, and told me to grab one without looking. I pulled out the marked packet. Toma's face went pale. I laughed because his expression was amazing. Then I opened the sugar packet and found 2 packets stuck together from the factory. The second one was also marked because his pen had bled through. That was when I realized my luck didn't always work in the simplest way. Reality liked tricks. It didn't just give me the winning result. It created a ridiculous path that still made the winning result happen. That made things much more interesting. On day 42, Toma took me to an arcade. He said if I was really lucky, I should prove it against the claw machines. Everybody knows claw machines are not games. They are transparent boxes where stuffed animals watch you donate money. I picked a machine containing a giant plush shark wearing sunglasses. The shark was wedged behind 2 other prizes. Even if the claw grabbed it perfectly, there was no way it would come out. I inserted 1 coin. The claw dropped. It missed the shark completely. Toma started laughing. Then the claw snagged the tag of a stuffed octopus. The octopus swung sideways, slapped the shark, knocked the shark into a plastic divider, and the divider popped loose. The shark slid down a pile of plush toys and fell into the prize chute. The machine made a sad mechanical sound like it had just realized it had been robbed. Toma stopped laughing. I hugged my shark. That night, I named him Professor Probability. Professor Probability became my research assistant. By research assistant, I mean I put sunglasses on him and talked to him whenever I was making questionable financial decisions. The first questionable financial decision came on day 50. There was a small horse race happening outside the city. Toma invited me because his uncle owned a food stall near the track, and I told myself I was going for grilled meat. Then I saw the odds board. One horse had odds so terrible that its name looked lonely at the bottom. Mayonnaise Meteor. I am not making that name up. Mayonnaise Meteor was an old gray horse with one ear folded sideways. According to Toma's uncle, the horse had lost 12 races in a row. In one race, it had become distracted by a butterfly. In another, it had stopped near the finish line because somebody in the audience opened a bag of carrots. Its jockey looked like he had accepted his fate years ago. I checked my spreadsheet. By then, I had been lucky for 50 days. I had no idea whether the effect was additive, multiplicative, or controlled by a cosmic accountant. But I knew one thing. If I was going to test a ridiculous long shot, Mayonnaise Meteor was perfect. I placed a small bet. Not my savings. Not my rent. Enough that losing would annoy me, and winning would buy several excellent dinners. The race began. Mayonnaise Meteor immediately fell behind. I wasn't surprised. One horse shot into the lead. Another followed. Mayonnaise Meteor ran like he had somewhere else to be. Toma slapped my shoulder and told me this was what happened when idiots trusted vibes. Then a loose advertising banner blew across the track. The lead horse swerved. The second horse swerved harder. 2 others got boxed in behind them. Mayonnaise Meteor, meanwhile, saw the banner and apparently thought it was interesting. He ran directly toward it. The banner lifted at the last second. He passed underneath while the other horses were still adjusting. Suddenly, my gray disaster was in second place. The crowd started yelling. The horse in first place was still far ahead, so I wasn't celebrating yet. And someone in the stands dropped a bright yellow lunch container. Mayonnaise Meteor saw it. I don't know what he thought it was. Maybe a carrot box. Maybe the sun. Maybe destiny. Whatever he saw, that horse transformed. He accelerated like he had remembered an unpaid debt. The jockey's entire body snapped backward. Mayonnaise Meteor flew down the final stretch, caught the leader at the last moment, and won by a nose. The stadium exploded. Toma's uncle dropped 3 skewers. I stood there holding my betting slip while Professor Probability's imaginary voice told me I had just made a terrible discovery. My luck worked on things that were already unlikely. That meant I could stop testing normal events. I could start testing stupid ones. I did not immediately become reckless. I would like that on the record. I became carefully stupid. There is a difference. For the next month, I built rules. Rule 1. No bets where losing could destroy my life. Rule 2. No physical danger unless I had an obvious exit. Rule 3. Never assume luck made me immortal. Rule 4. If Professor Probability looked disappointed, reconsider. Professor Probability was a plush shark, so Rule 4 did not help much. I used small amounts of money to test different kinds of chance. Sports bets, card games, raffles, online auctions, random number contests, restaurant promotions, even guessing when the office printer would jam. The results were ridiculous. I did not win everything. That was important. Sometimes I lost. But the losses became rarer, and the wins became stranger. If I guessed a basketball team would win, their opponent might accidentally call a timeout they didn't have. If I chose a restaurant raffle ticket, the employee might spill the bucket and pick mine while cleaning up. If I entered an online auction with a low bid, every other bidder might suddenly lose internet access because a delivery truck hit a neighborhood cable box. Once, I guessed that Toma would sneeze exactly 3 times before 3 p.m. He sneezed twice at 2:58. I thought I had lost. At 2:59, our boss sprayed some terrible cologne in the hallway. Toma sneezed so hard he dropped his phone. I won 500 yen and a bag of chips. That was the moment Toma stopped calling me lucky. He started calling me cursed in reverse. I liked that. By day 90, the numbers were becoming absurd. I started thinking about the 1% theory again. If I literally became 1% luckier each day, what did that mean after 90 days? 90% luckier? 2.5 times luckier because of compounding? Or was luck not a number at all? Maybe each day reality became 1% more willing to embarrass itself on my behalf? That explanation matched the evidence better. Then came the casino. I didn't even choose to go. A client from work invited our department to a fancy hotel for a celebration. The hotel had a casino floor, and after dinner, my boss got drunk enough to decide he was a roulette expert. He lost almost immediately. Toma looked at me. I looked at Toma. Professor Probability was back home because apparently plush sharks are not appropriate business dinner accessories. I had no adult supervision, so I walked to a roulette table. I exchanged a small amount of cash for chips. The dealer smiled the way casino employees smile at people who are about to donate to the building. I chose a number, 17. The wheel spun. The ball bounced. 17. I won. People around me clapped. I took some of the winnings and chose black. Black, then odd. Odd, then a column. Correct. I was not betting everything each time. I was spreading small wagers, testing. After enough wins, a man in a suit began watching me from across the floor. That was reasonable. I looked extremely suspicious. The dealer changed. I lost once. The man in the suit relaxed. Then I won 6 times in a row. He stopped relaxing. Tomo whispered that we should leave. I agreed. Then my boss, who had somehow lost even more money while I wasn't looking, stumbled over and loudly announced that I was his employee and that I had no special skills besides making spreadsheets ugly. The suit man heard him. For some reason, that made me look less suspicious. I cashed out. The casino gave me my money. I thought that was the end. Then the cashier handed me a promotional ticket because my total happened to qualify for a hotel giveaway. I scratched it on the way out. Free weekend suite? Toma stared at me. I stared at the ticket. My boss asked if he could borrow money. I told him no. That was the first time luck made me feel powerful. Not because of the money, because I had finally said no to my boss without worrying about anything going wrong. The next morning, he tried to punish me with extra work. 5 minutes later, the company's server crashed and erased the assignment. He gave me a different task. A client called and canceled it. He moved my desk near the bathroom. A pipe leaked, flooded that side of the office, and maintenance relocated me to an empty window desk twice the size. My boss stood in the hallway staring at me like I was a weather phenomenon. I almost felt sorry for him. Then a ceiling tile dripped on his head. I stopped feeling sorry. By day 100, I quit. I had saved enough money for my experiments to survive for a while, and more importantly, my normal job had become unbearable because I could see opportunities everywhere. The city suddenly looked different. Every raffle was a door. Every investment was a puzzle. Every absurd contest was a laboratory. I didn't want to spend my increasingly supernatural luck formatting sales reports for a man who used the phrase maximum synergy without laughing. So I walked into the office, handed in my resignation, and waited for something dramatic to happen. Nothing did. My boss accepted it. I packed my desk. I left. Then, as I stepped outside, a gust of wind ripped a promotional flyer off a wall and slapped it directly across my face. I peeled it off. It was an advertisement for a televised citywide treasure hunt with a cash prize large enough to pay my rent for 3 years. I looked up at the sky. I had been unemployed for 12 seconds. Reality was already sending me job offers. The treasure hunt was supposed to be difficult. That was how the advertisement sold it. 20 teams, 50 clues, one entire city. Hidden checkpoints, puzzle boxes, coded messages, physical challenges, and enough sponsored products to make every contestant look like a walking billboard. I signed up alone. The registration woman asked where the rest of my team was. I pointed at Professor Probability, who I had brought in a backpack with his sunglasses sticking out. She did not laugh. I respected her professionalism. The first clue was released Saturday morning in the Central Plaza. Hundreds of people gathered around a giant screen while drones filmed overhead. Most contestants had matching shirts, bicycles, tablets, portable chargers, maps, and plans. I had comfortable shoes, a bottle of water, and a plush shark. The timer started. The first clue appeared. It was a poem about bells, birds, and a king who had no crown. Everybody sprinted toward different landmarks. I read it twice and understood nothing. Then a delivery cyclist nearly crashed beside me. A cardboard box fell off his bike, burst open, and scattered souvenir keychains across the pavement. Every keychain showed the same landmark, the old bell tower in Kingfisher Square. I stared at the tiny metal tower. The cyclist apologized and began gathering them. I helped him, handed back the keychains, and walked calmly toward Kingfisher Square. I arrived first. The clue station gave me a sealed envelope. Inside was a riddle about something that drank without a mouth and slept beneath stone. I had no idea. Then the park sprinkler beside me exploded. Water shot sideways, hit a maintenance sign, and knocked it over. Under the sign was a map showing an underground reservoir. I started laughing. The camera crew assigned to follow leading contestants caught the entire thing. That was important later. For the next 2 hours, the city humiliated probability for my entertainment. A clue about a blue lion led me to a sports statue because a bus drove past with a blue lion advertisement covering the exact location name. A coded lock required 4 numbers. I sneezed, dropped the clue card, and when I bent down, I saw somebody had scratched 4 digits into the pavement. Correct combination. A checkpoint required me to throw a beanbag through a tiny ring from 20 meters away. My throw went terribly wide, bounced off a trash can lid, hit a street sign, rolled along a railing, and fell through the ring backward. The referee had to review the rules for 6 minutes because nobody had specified that the beanbag needed to enter from the front. It counted. The crowd loved it. By noon, clips of me were spreading online. People started calling me the Luck Goblin. I preferred Luck Emperor, but the internet had voted before consulting me. The final clue was the only one that almost stopped me. It gave us a list of old newspaper headlines and asked for a location connected to all of them. I had reached the final stage with 2 other teams. One team consisted of escape room champions. The other included a retired detective and his terrifyingly organized daughter. They immediately started comparing dates and names. I sat on a bench and stared at the paper. For once, no helpful object fell from the sky. No car drove past with an answer printed on the side. No pigeon delivered knowledge. I started wondering if my luck had a limit. Then a little boy ran by chasing a balloon. The balloon string wrapped around my wrist. His mother apologized, untangled it, and offered me a piece of candy from a bag to thank me for not letting the balloon escape. I took one. The wrapper had a tiny picture of the city museum. I looked at the headlines again. Every headline involved something that had later been donated to the city museum. I ran. The final treasure chest was hidden in the museum courtyard underneath a fake dinosaur egg. I found it 3 minutes before the detective team. When the host asked how I solved the clues, I made the mistake of answering honestly. I said things just kept happening. That clip went even more viral than the beanbag. By Monday, I had 30,000 followers. By Tuesday, I had 60,000. By Wednesday, a sports drink company offered me money to film a commercial where I casually guessed which bottle contained a winning label. They prepared 20 bottles. I chose one. It won. The director asked for another take from a different angle. I chose a second bottle. That one also won. They had only planted one winning label. The staff opened the bottle and discovered that a printing error had placed another winning code on it. The company ended up using both clips. The advertisement's slogan became something about drinking your chances. I got paid more for one afternoon than my old job paid me in 2 months. That was when I formed a business. Calling it a business is generous. At first, it was me, Toma, Professor Probability, and a rented room above a dentist. Toma had quit 2 weeks after me because my boss tried to replace both of us with an automated spreadsheet system, which accidentally emailed the company's full snack budget to every client. Toma became my manager because he understood contracts and because he was the only person willing to tell me when an idea was stupid. Unfortunately, by that point, stupid ideas were becoming my most profitable category. We called the company Fortunate Error. Our first plan was simple. I would use my growing luck to find undervalued opportunities. Our second plan was not simple because I immediately ruined the first plan by buying a bankrupt umbrella company. Toma nearly attacked me with a stapler. The company was called Dry Tomorrow. It made cheap folding umbrellas with a strange feature. The handles contained tiny temperature sensors that were supposed to glow before rain. The product had failed because the sensors were inaccurate, the umbrellas broke easily, and the founder had apparently designed the logo in 15 minutes while on a bus. I bought a large share for almost nothing after seeing the listing online. Toma asked why. I had no reason. That was the problem. The listing had appeared at the top of a page because my laptop trackpad froze while I was scrolling. By then, I trusted those moments. 2 days later, a celebrity actress was photographed leaving a studio during a surprise storm. Her assistant handed her a Dry Tomorrow umbrella because it was the only one left in a convenience store display. The photograph exploded online. People loved the ugly little glowing handle. Then somebody discovered that the temperature sensor could be modified through a phone app to glow different colors. Teenagers started customizing them. Then a music group used 6 of the umbrellas in a dance video. Then a major retailer called. Within 3 weeks, the bankrupt umbrella company was no longer bankrupt. Toma stood in our office looking at the sales chart. then slowly turned toward Professor Probability. He asked the shark if it knew what was happening. Professor Probability remained professionally silent. That investment changed everything. I had enough money now to make bigger tests. Not dangerous tests, just financially ridiculous ones. I bought shares in a tiny company that made silent potato chip bags for movie theaters. The day after I invested, a famous director complained during an interview that he hated hearing people open snacks during emotional scenes. Silent potato chip bags became a meme. Sales multiplied. I invested in a startup selling self-warming toilet seats for camping. A cold snap hit the country during a major outdoor festival. The product sold out. I bought a warehouse full of discontinued purple office chairs because the seller offered me an impossible discount if I took all of them. A popular streamer used the exact same purple chair in the background of a video, and suddenly thousands of fans wanted one. Toma started tracking my investments on a wall. Green stickers meant profit. Red stickers meant loss. After 2 months, there were 43 green stickers and 1 red sticker. The red sticker was attached to a company that sold square watermelons shaped like famous philosophers. I still believe that idea was ahead of its time. My luck wasn't only affecting money. People started appearing in my life exactly when I needed them. When Dry Tomorrow needed a logistics expert, I got trapped in an elevator for 11 minutes with a woman named Hana who had managed shipping networks for 8 years and had just quit her job that morning. When we needed a lawyer, I accidentally received somebody else's restaurant reservation confirmation. I called the restaurant to correct the mistake, learned the other person had the same last 4 phone digits as me, and ended up talking to him because the staff mixed up our tables when we both arrived. He was a corporate attorney named Sato who loved horse racing. The moment I mentioned Mayonnaise Meteor, he recognized me. He became our lawyer at a rate Toma described as suspiciously friendly. When we needed a better office, the dentist downstairs decided to expand and asked us to leave. The same afternoon, a property owner contacted me because his daughter was a fan of the treasure hunt videos. He offered us a top-floor office with a balcony, 3 meeting rooms, and a tiny indoor pond that nobody could explain. The rent was lower. I moved Professor Probability beside the pond. He looked powerful there. By day 180, I could no longer pretend this was ordinary luck. I had been tracking everything. The chance events weren't simply happening around me. They were organizing themselves. Imagine you throw a coin and want heads. Normal luck makes the coin land heads. My luck had reached the point where the coin could hit a bird, the bird could drop a cracker, the cracker could distract a dog, the dog could pull its leash, the leash could bump the table, and the table could flip the coin after it had already landed tails. It was like reality had become a screenwriter who hated boring solutions. Naturally, I decided to challenge it. My first deliberate impossible bet happened at a charity festival. There was a booth where people could throw a basketball from half court. Make 1 shot. Win a stuffed bear. Make 3 in a row. Win a television. Nobody had won the television all day. The organizer recognized me and joked that the luck goblin should try. I still hated that nickname. I stepped onto the court. I was not good at basketball. That mattered. If I made 3 normal shots, I would learn nothing. So I asked if I could shoot facing backward. The organizer laughed and said yes. I threw the first ball over my head. It hit the rim, bounced straight up, landed on the top edge of the backboard, rolled along it, dropped behind the glass, hit a support bar, and somehow fell through the hoop. The crowd screamed. Second shot. I threw too hard. The ball missed the hoop by several meters, struck a hanging festival banner, fell onto the roof of a food stall, rolled down the plastic awning, launched off the corner, and entered the basket from the side. The referee stood under the hoop with both hands on his head. Third shot. By now, hundreds of people were filming. I took Professor Probability from Toma, placed the plush shark on my head, closed my eyes and threw. The ball went straight toward a lighting rig. It hit a cable. A worker shouted. The cable swung. A decorative balloon cluster dropped lower. The ball hit the balloons, changed direction, bounced off a mascot's giant foam head, and rolled across the rim for what felt like an entire year. Then it fell in. The festival lost its mind. I won the television. I donated it back to the charity because carrying it home would have been annoying. That video reached millions of views, and that was when a man named Riku Mori decided I was a fraud. Riku was a professional skeptic. I didn't know that was a career until I met him. He hosted a popular online show where he exposed fake psychics, rigged contests, dishonest influencers, and people who claimed they could communicate with expensive houseplants. He was smart, serious, and apparently allergic to fun. He posted a 20-minute video analyzing my basketball challenge frame by frame. His conclusion was that the event had been staged. His evidence was that the shots were too impossible to happen naturally. I found that very funny because he was completely correct about the second half. They were too impossible. They just weren't staged. Riku challenged me publicly. He wanted to design a set of tests that I could not manipulate. Toma told me to ignore him. Hana told me it was free publicity. Sato told me to sign nothing without him. Professor Probability stared into the middle distance. I accepted. The event took place in a rented television studio with independent judges, live cameras, sealed equipment, and enough security to make me feel like I was about to meet a president. Riku began with cards. A new deck was opened on camera, shuffled by a machine, shuffled again by a judge, cut by an audience member, and placed face down. I had to guess the top card. I said 7 of hearts. Riku flipped it. 7 of hearts. The audience murmured. Riku did not react. He replaced the deck. New sealed deck. Same process. I guessed Queen of Clubs. Queen of Clubs. His eyebrow moved slightly. That was the first crack. Then came dice. 2 transparent dice in a clear cup. I had to call the total before the roll. 12. Double 6. Again. 9. 5 and 4. Again. 7. The first die showed 3. The second die rolled off the table. A judge tried to catch it, accidentally hit it with his clipboard, and knocked it back onto the table. It landed 4. 7. Riku's eye twitched. Then he brought out his main test. A lottery machine. 1,000 numbered balls. A computer randomly selected one number in secret before the broadcast. Nobody in the studio knew it. The number was encrypted and stored on an offline device. My job was to choose the matching ball from the machine. 1 chance in 1,000. Easy enough for a lucky day. But Riku wasn't finished. I had to wear thick gloves and a blindfold. And the machine would spin the balls for 30 seconds first. Now the audience was silent. I put on the blindfold. The machine started. 1,000 plastic balls rattled around like angry popcorn. The hatch opened. I reached in. For the first time in months, I felt nervous. Not because I thought I would lose, because I wanted to know what would happen if I couldn't possibly influence the outcome. I grabbed a ball. Before I could pull it out, the studio lights went dark. Everyone shouted. Emergency lights switched on. A technician announced that the building had experienced a brief power fluctuation. The lottery machine had stopped spinning. My hand was still inside. Riku immediately demanded that we reset the test. The judges agreed. I removed my hand without taking a ball. The machine was restarted. Then one of the plastic balls cracked. Apparently the sudden stop had trapped it near the motor. The judges removed the damaged ball. Its number was 638. The computer technician checked the secret result. His face changed. The selected number was 638. I had technically never drawn a ball. The correct ball had eliminated itself. The studio went completely quiet. Then Toma started laughing so hard he had to sit down. Riku stared at the broken ball like it had personally betrayed science. The judges argued for 10 minutes about whether that counted. Eventually, they decided it did not, because the rules specifically said I had to select the ball. So we repeated the test with 999 balls. I reached inside. I pulled out number 214. The secret number was 214. Riku walked off the stage. He came back 30 seconds later because it was his show, and he realized leaving was unprofessional. That broadcast changed my life more than the treasure hunt. Before, I was a funny, lucky guy online. Afterward, people treated me like a walking statistical emergency. Interview requests arrived from everywhere. Casinos sent invitations and bans at the same time. A university professor emailed asking whether I would sit in a laboratory while machines generated random numbers around me. A wedding planner offered to pay me just to attend ceremonies because couples thought my presence would prevent rain. A professional baseball team jokingly asked whether I could sit behind their dugout during playoffs. The joke became less funny after they won 9 games in a row while I happened to attend 3 of them. And Riku did something I didn't expect. He joined me. Not because he believed in magic. He still refused to use that word. He said there had to be a mechanism. He wanted to find it. So Fortunate Error gained a new unofficial employee whose main job was trying to prove I was impossible. I liked him immediately. He hated that. Together, we started designing better experiments. We tested machines I could not see. We tested outcomes decided in other cities. We tested games where nobody knew the winning condition until after I made my choice. My luck still worked. Sometimes directly. Sometimes with absurd chains of coincidence. Once Riku asked me to choose one of 100 sealed boxes. After I chose box 41, he revealed that only one box contained a gold token. We opened box 41. Empty. Riku smiled for the first time in 3 days, and somebody noticed the box had a false bottom. Under it was a manufacturing inspection sticker printed in gold. Riku said that did not count. I said reality had artistic freedom. We argued for an hour. By then, I was on day 212, and my luck was no longer waiting for me to ask. It had started preparing ahead. I discovered that when I tried to buy a building, Fortunate Error had outgrown the office with the indoor pond. We now had 12 employees, 3 actual departments, a legal cabinet Sato guarded like a dragon, and a conference room permanently occupied by boxes of umbrellas. Toma found a building near the river that was perfect. 6 floors, good location, rooftop terrace, enough parking, a lobby large enough for Professor Probability to eventually receive the statue he deserved. There was only one problem. The owner refused to sell. His name was Kenzo Arakawa, and he was a retired restaurant chain founder with more money than patience. He had rejected several larger companies already. He said he liked the building and planned to give it to his grandchildren. Normally, that would be the end. I didn't want to pressure an old man out of his property, but Toma suggested we at least meet him and ask about a long lease. The meeting was scheduled for Friday. On Thursday afternoon, I was walking back from lunch when a bag of roasted chestnuts split open on the sidewalk in front of me. They rolled everywhere. I helped the vendor gather them. He thanked me and handed me a small paper packet of a weird local candy made from sweet bean paste and salted plum. I almost refused because it looked like something designed during a food shortage. Then I remembered my rule. When reality hands me a suspicious snack, I accept it. The next day, I arrived at Arakawa's office with Toma. The old man barely looked at our proposal. He said he wasn't interested. Then he noticed the candy packet sticking out of my bag. His entire face changed. It turned out the candy had been made by a tiny shop in his hometown for decades. He had eaten it as a child. The shop had almost closed the previous year, and he thought nobody in the city sold it anymore. We spent 20 minutes talking about candy. By the end of the meeting, he still refused to sell the building. Instead, he offered us a 20-year lease at half the market rate because he said anyone carrying salted plum bean candy into a business meeting was either trustworthy or insane, and he liked both qualities. Toma looked at me in the elevator afterward. He said my luck had apparently started arranging snacks 24 hours in advance. Riku corrected him. He said we had no proof the chestnut bag accident had been caused by anything. The elevator opened directly onto a promotional display for the exact same candy. Riku stared at it for a long time. He stopped talking. That building became our headquarters. The rooftop terrace became my favorite place to think because chance behaved differently when I wasn't testing it. Some people assume that if you're extremely lucky, you stop planning. That would be stupid. Luck gave me opportunities. It did not automatically explain which opportunities were worth taking. Also, I had learned that my luck enjoyed embarrassing me almost as much as helping me. For example, I once needed to impress a group of investors from overseas. I had prepared a perfect presentation. 5 minutes before the meeting, a sprinkler malfunctioned and soaked my shirt. I had no spare clothes. The only dry shirt in the office belonged to Riku. It had a cartoon raccoon holding a calculator. So I delivered a multi-million-yen investment presentation wearing a raccoon calculator shirt. The lead investor loved it because his company mascot was a raccoon. We got the funding. The shirt appeared in every photograph. For 3 weeks, people online believed the raccoon was our corporate logo. Toma printed 50 shirts and sold them. They sold out. That was my life now. Failure had become a complicated route to success. By day 240, my investments were ridiculous enough that financial commentators had started watching them. Whenever Fortunate Error bought into a tiny company, its stock price jumped because people assumed I knew something. That created a new problem. I couldn't tell whether my investment succeeded because I was lucky, or because everyone was copying me. So Riku suggested a blind investment test. He created a list of 100 private businesses and removed all identifying information. I could only see one paragraph describing what each company did. No names. No founders. No revenue numbers beyond broad ranges. I had to pick one. I chose a company that developed tiny rubber shoes for delivery robots. Toma put his face in his hands. Riku asked why. I said the phrase tiny robot shoes made me happy. We invested quietly through an intermediary. 2 weeks later, a freak heat wave caused pavement temperatures to rise enough that several major delivery robots started damaging their wheels. The little rubber shoes protected against heat and improved grip. A giant logistics company ordered them. Then somebody posted a video of a robot wearing bright yellow shoes and crossing a wet street without slipping. The video became adorable enough to cause financial consequences. The company grew tenfold. Riku printed the investment report, placed it on his desk, and wrote, "I hate footwear" across the top. I framed it. My next blind pick was a business that rented goats to eat weeds from difficult hillsides. A city environmental program expanded the next month. Goat demand exploded. I had somehow become rich from robot shoes and landscaping goats. At that point, money itself stopped being exciting. I could buy things I wanted. I could help my parents. I could pay employees well. I could donate without checking my bank account afterward. Those parts were good. But numbers getting larger on a screen did not give me the same feeling anymore. What excited me was probability. I wanted to find the edge. I wanted to choose something so unlikely that even my luck would hesitate. Riku thought this was a terrible instinct. Toma thought it was worse. Professor Probability offered no objection. So naturally, I entered a poker tournament. I knew how to play poker, but I was not a professional. That was the point. The tournament had hundreds of players, including famous champions who could apparently calculate odds by looking at the movement of your eyebrows. I promised Toma I would only use the entry fee and never add more money. He made me repeat the promise while Sato recorded it. The first table was easy. I got good cards. Not absurd cards. Just enough to survive. Then the luck started becoming theatrical. A player with pocket kings went all in against me when I had a weaker hand. I was about to fold when a waiter carrying drinks tripped near the table. Nobody was hurt, but one glass splashed across the felt. Play stopped while staff replaced the surface. During the delay, the player with kings received a phone call. He stepped away. When he returned, he was distracted and accidentally exposed one of his cards while sitting down. I folded before losing anything. Later, I bluffed with terrible cards. The strongest player at the table stared at me for almost a minute. Then a camera flash from the audience reflected off my watch and hit him in the eye. He thought my sudden movement was a nervous tell. He interpreted it backward and folded the winning hand. I collected the pot while having no idea what had happened. By the second day, I was still alive. By the third, I was at a televised feature table. Riku sat in the audience with a notebook, recording every unusual event. He stopped writing after page 12 because his hand hurt. One opponent developed hiccups, only when he had strong cards. Another kept receiving exactly the kind of hands that encouraged him to overbet against me and lose by one card. A famous champion tried to trap me with a straight, only for the river card to complete my flush. He stared at the dealer. The dealer stared at me. I looked innocent because I actually was. The final table became a circus. I was heads up against a player named Daigo Senzaki, who had been playing professionally for 15 years. He had sunglasses, perfect posture, and the expression of a man who considered smiling a weakness. I had Professor Probability sitting on a chair behind me because the tournament staff had finally given up arguing about the plush shark. Daigo had more chips. He was better than me. He knew it. I knew it. Everyone watching knew it. Then the last hand happened. I had an ace and a 9. The community cards gave me almost nothing. Daigo bet aggressively. Everything about the situation told me to fold. Then I noticed a tiny moth circling one of the studio lights. That had nothing to do with poker, which, in my life, meant it might have everything to do with poker. I called. The next card gave me a pair of 9s, still weak. Daigo bet larger. The moth hit the light, fell, recovered, and flew directly toward Professor Probability. It landed on the shark's sunglasses. I looked at Riku. Riku slowly shook his head, silently begging me not to interpret insect behavior as financial advice. I called again. The final card was another 9. 3 of a kind. Daigo went all in. I called. He revealed 2 pair. I won the hand and took the chip lead. Riku later told me the moth had no causal connection to the card. I agreed. That was what made it funny. I won the tournament 20 minutes later when Daigo's final bluff failed because one of his sunglasses lenses fell out mid-hand and startled him. The prize money was enormous. The headline was not about the money. The headline was about the shark. A camera had caught the moth sitting on Professor Probability during the winning hand. People began calling him the Oracle Shark. He received his own social media account. Toma managed it. Professor Probability gained more followers than I had. I was furious. That should have been enough excitement for a while. Instead, 3 days later, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a single brass key and a printed invitation. It said I had been selected for something called the Impossible House. Riku immediately assumed scam. Sato assumed lawsuit. Toma assumed content. I assumed fun. We investigated. The Impossible House turned out to be a legitimate private competition created by eccentric engineer Gen Natsume, a man famous for designing puzzle attractions for amusement parks and then making too much money from patents to care what anyone thought of him. Once a year, he invited 10 people to enter a specially built mansion filled with mechanical games, hidden rooms, strange challenges, and probability traps. Reach the final chamber. Win a prize. Nobody had ever reached the final chamber. The competition wasn't physically dangerous. Natsume was weird, not criminal. Every trap had emergency shutoffs. Every challenge had staff watching through cameras. But the house was designed to punish predictable thinking. I accepted before Toma finished reading the rules. The mansion sat on a private hill outside the city. It looked like a luxury hotel designed by someone who hated straight lines. Doors leaned at odd angles. Windows were different sizes. A giant metal weather vane shaped like a question mark spun on the roof even when there was no wind. The other contestants included a chess grandmaster, a magician, a mathematician, an escape artist, a professional video game speedrunner, a championship puzzle solver, a retired detective, a memory expert, and a woman named Emmy who introduced herself simply as very good at guessing. I respected Emmy immediately. Natsume welcomed us through a giant screen in the lobby. He explained that the house contained 7 gates. Each gate tested a different relationship with uncertainty. The first room looked simple. There were 100 doors. 99 led back to the lobby. 1 led forward. We could each choose once every 10 minutes. No clues. The mathematician groaned because there was no mathematical strategy. The magician started examining hinges. I walked toward door number 8. Then I changed my mind and picked door number 83 because a loose thread on my sleeve caught on its handle as I passed. It opened to the next room. The other contestants stared at me. I waved. The second gate required crossing a floor made of 100 pressure tiles. Some tiles lit green, some lit red. Green tiles were safe. Red tiles triggered a wall that gently pushed you back to the entrance. The pattern changed randomly every 5 seconds. The speedrunner tried to memorize timing. The chess grandmaster looked for patterns. I stepped forward. Green. Another step. Green. Another. Red. The wall mechanism started. Then it jammed. A technician's voice came over the speaker and apologized. The wall retracted. According to the rules, equipment failure meant the affected contestant could remain on the tile. The system reset. My tile turned green. I continued. I crossed the entire room while Riku watched remotely and sent Toma 17 messages containing only punctuation. The third gate was darts, not normal darts. We stood behind an opaque screen and threw darts at a spinning board we couldn't see. The target was a circle the size of a coin. I threw. My dart hit the outer frame, bounced onto the floor, got kicked accidentally by a staff member who had entered to retrieve another contestant's dart, slid under the screen, and stopped with its tip touching the target circle. Natsume came over the speaker. There was a long silence. Then he said he had checked the rules. The dart only needed to touch the target. I advanced. By gate 4. The entire house seemed annoyed with me. The challenge was a room containing 50 identical locked boxes and 50 identical keys. Each key opened exactly 1 box. Inside one box was a pass token. We had 15 minutes. The obvious method was trial and error. I grabbed the first key. Before I inserted it anywhere, a ceiling vent rattled. A tiny screw fell out. It landed on one box. I tried the key there. Wrong. I laughed. Finally. Reality had given me a false hint. I tried another box. Wrong. A third. Wrong. For the next 10 minutes, nothing worked. My pulse rose. This was new. I had become used to the world bending. Now it seemed completely ordinary. With 3 minutes left, I had opened only 2 boxes using other keys. Both were empty. I could hear the other contestants moving around nearby rooms. Maybe my luck had finally met a challenge it couldn't solve. Then I stepped on the fallen ceiling screw. It rolled under my shoe. I slipped. I grabbed a shelf to stop myself. The shelf tilted. All 50 boxes slid sideways. One fell to the floor and broke open. Inside was the pass token. I lay on my back laughing so hard I couldn't stand up. The rules never said the box had to be unlocked. Natsume came over the speaker again. He sounded less cheerful. Gate 5 involved a machine that fired soft foam balls across a corridor in random patterns. We had to walk from one end to the other without being hit. I made it halfway before a foam ball headed directly toward my face. Another foam ball hit it in midair. Both missed me. Then 3 collided at once. Then the machine on the left fired a ball that struck the machine on the right sensor. The right machine shut down. Its warning light triggered a safety pause across the entire corridor. I walked through while the system rebooted. At Gate 6, only 4 contestants remained. Me, Emmy the Guesser, the Chess Grandmaster, and the Escape Artist. We entered a circular room containing 4 buttons. 1 button advanced us. 3 eliminated us. The correct button changed after each press based on a random generator. Emmy smiled at me. She said she had been looking forward to this. For the first time, I wondered whether I had met someone like me. The Chess Grandmaster chose first. Wrong. Eliminated. The Escape Artist chose next. Wrong. Eliminated. Emmy walked to the blue button. She pressed it. Correct. She advanced. Now it was my turn. The generator changed the answer. I looked at the 4 buttons. Red, blue, yellow, green. I felt nothing. No breeze. No falling object. No strange sound. No helpful insect. I chose yellow. Before I pressed it, Emmy's door failed to close completely behind her. A staff member entered to fix it. His tool belt caught the edge of the control panel. The panel popped open. For half a second, I saw 4 wires inside. 1 wire had a yellow tag. The staff member covered it immediately and apologized. I pressed yellow. Correct. At Gate 7, Emmy was waiting. The final chamber looked almost empty. There was a table, 2 chairs, and a black wooden box. Natsume appeared in person for the first time. He was an older man with wild gray hair and slippers shaped like fish. I decided I liked him. He explained the final game. Inside the black box were 2 envelopes. One contained the grand prize certificate. The other contained nothing. Emmy and I would each choose one. That sounded too simple. Of course it was. Natsume then explained that before we chose, he would secretly flip a coin. If it landed heads, the prize would remain where it started. If tails, an internal mechanism would swap the envelopes. The mechanism was silent. The box was sealed. Neither contestant could know what happened. Pure 50-50 chance. Emmy looked delighted. I looked at her. She looked at me. For 6 gates, I had thought I was competing against the house. Now I realized the house had been introducing us. Emmy chose the left envelope. I chose the right. Natsume opened the box. Both envelopes contained prize certificates. Nobody moved. Natsume checked them. Both were real. He called his staff. The staff checked the loading procedure. Somehow, 2 prize envelopes had been placed in the box that morning. The empty envelope was still sitting inside the preparation room. Emmy started laughing. I started laughing too. Natsume sat down and rubbed his forehead. Then he awarded both of us the prize because, in his words, the house had clearly surrendered. The prize wasn't money. It was stranger. Natsume gave each of us one request. We could ask him to build any safe probability challenge we wanted. Anything. That was the moment my hobby became dangerous to common sense. Emmy used her request first. She asked Natsume to build a room with 10,000 identical light switches. Only one switch would turn on a lamp. The wiring would be randomized after every attempt. I asked why she wanted that. She shrugged and said she liked switches. That explanation somehow made perfect sense to me. My request was more complicated. I wanted a chain of unrelated events where every step had to succeed before the next step became possible. Not one lucky guess. Not one lucky card. A whole sequence. I wanted to know whether my luck could carry a result through multiple layers of nonsense. Natsume's eyes lit up. He spent 2 weeks designing what he called the catastrophically unreasonable machine. The name was dramatic, but the machine itself looked like a school science project built by a billionaire. It filled an entire warehouse. Step 1. I had to throw a ping pong ball from a balcony into a narrow tube 30 meters away. The tube would release a marble. The marble had to roll down a maze with movable gates controlled by random electronic signals. If it reached the bottom, it would strike a switch that launched a paper airplane. The paper airplane had to pass through a moving ring. If it did, a sensor would release a toy car. The toy car would drive across a platform covered with rotating obstacles. If it reached the end, it would press a button that activated a mechanical hand. The hand would flip a coin. If the coin landed heads, a final light would turn green. Natsume estimated the chance of a successful full sequence at less than 1 in several million. Riku checked the math and said it was actually worse because the paper airplane hated air. Toma asked why adults were spending company time on this. I told him science. He told me to stop saying science like it was a legal defense. We live-streamed the attempt because by then everything I did became content whether I wanted it to or not. I stood on the balcony with the ping pong ball. The tube looked tiny. I threw. The ball missed by at least 2 meters. It hit a hanging cable. The cable swung into a ventilation duct. A puff of air shot out. The ball changed direction and dropped into the tube. The warehouse erupted. Marble released. It rolled into the maze. First gate. Open. Second gate. Closed. The marble bounced backward. A random signal changed the first gate, redirecting it down a side path Natsume hadn't expected anyone to use. The marble struck the edge of a screw, jumped across a divider, and landed beyond the second gate. It continued. At the bottom, it hit the switch. Paper airplane launched. The moving ring shifted left. The airplane drifted right. It was going to miss. Then somebody in the audience sneezed. I am serious. The tiny air movement should not have mattered from that distance, but at the exact same moment, a ventilation fan changed speed. The combined airflow tilted the airplane just enough. It passed through the ring sideways. Sensor activated. Toy car started. The first rotating obstacle knocked it almost off the platform. The car hung with one wheel in the air. Then the obstacle completed its rotation and tapped the rear bumper. The car swung back onto the platform. It drove under the second obstacle instead of around it because a rubber flap had been installed 2 millimeters too high. It reached the end. Button pressed. Mechanical hand activated. Coin flipped. The coin hit the hand on the way down, bounced onto the table, rolled on its edge, circled twice, and stopped leaning against the base of the machine. Nobody could tell which side counted. Riku walked over with a camera. The upper face was heads. Natsume had defined the result as whichever face was most upward when motion stopped. Green light. The warehouse went insane. I didn't celebrate immediately. I just stood there. That experiment changed how I understood my ability. My luck wasn't only increasing the probability of a final outcome. It seemed capable of protecting a path. Once I committed to something, coincidences could stack on top of coincidences until the result arrived. That was terrifying for about 4 seconds. Then it became the coolest thing I had ever learned. I began attempting what I called probability towers. I would choose a silly goal, then make success depend on several unlikely events. Could I order the one dumpling in a restaurant containing 2 shrimp instead of 1, then have the receipt total end in 777? Then walk outside and immediately see a yellow sports car? Yes. Could I buy a random second-hand jacket? Discover money in the pocket? Use that money to buy a raffle ticket? Win a bicycle? And then learn the bicycle had once belonged to a minor celebrity? Also yes. Could I toss a bottle cap from my office balcony, have it land inside a recycling bin on the street? and then have someone below pick it up before it touched the bottom because they happened to be emptying the bin. That one failed because Toma grabbed me by the collar and reminded me not to throw objects from buildings. Reasonable. My public reputation became strange. Some people thought I had supernatural powers. Some thought I was a genius gambler pretending to be silly. Some thought every video was staged. Some believed Professor Probability controlled everything. That last group created fan art. One drawing showed the shark sitting on a throne while I carried his briefcase. I saved it. Around day 270, I got invited to a business dinner hosted by Masaru Kido, one of the richest investors in the country. Kido had a reputation for destroying bad pitches in under 3 minutes. He had funded airlines, robotics firms, restaurant chains, and enough real estate to make maps nervous. Toma wanted me to behave professionally. I promised. Then, on the way to dinner, my taxi got trapped behind a parade of people dressed as giant tomatoes. I still don't know what festival they were celebrating. I arrived 12 minutes late. My suit jacket had a tomato-shaped sticker stuck to the back because one of the parade volunteers had bumped me. I didn't notice. Kido noticed immediately. He stood up, walked around the table, and stared at the sticker. I thought the meeting was over. Then he started laughing. His first company, 40 years earlier, had been a tiny canned tomato distributor. Almost nobody knew because the business had failed before he became famous. He kept the sticker. Dinner lasted 3 hours. Kido became one of our biggest investors. Toma didn't even ask anymore. He just added Tomato Parade to the internal luck log. Kido gave me access to larger opportunities. Most were sensible. So, naturally, I chose the least sensible one, an abandoned amusement park. The park was called Wonder Whale Land. It had closed 7 years earlier after attendance collapsed. Its mascot was a blue whale with human shoes. The roller coaster was rusty. The food court had been colonized by pigeons. The central fountain contained exactly one shopping cart and no water. The property was cheap because nobody knew what to do with it. I loved it immediately. Toma asked what our business plan was. I pointed at the giant whale statue. He asked again. I admitted I did not have one. Kido laughed so hard he approved the financing. We bought Wonder Whale Land. Our plan became to renovate slowly and reopen part of it as a retro event venue. Then reality got impatient. A week after the purchase, a famous music producer drove past the park because his navigation app rerouted him around traffic. He saw the giant whale statue, remembered a music video concept he had abandoned years earlier, and contacted us. He rented the park for a week. The video featured dancers and old carnival rides surrounded by neon lights. It became a massive hit. Fans started visiting the gates to take photographs. Then an urban exploration channel discovered old footage of the park's original opening day. Then a fashion brand asked to host a show there. Then a food company wanted to revive the park's discontinued whale-shaped ice cream. Within 2 months, we had enough rental income to restore half the park without using our original budget. I insisted on keeping the ridiculous mascot. The whale with shoes became fashionable. Professor Probability finally had competition. That was also when I gained my first real business enemy. His name was Jin Moriyama. Jin owned Bright Kingdom, a newer amusement park 20 minutes away. Wonder Whale Land's sudden popularity annoyed him because our retro events started pulling weekend visitors from his park. At first he competed normally. Discount tickets, new rides, advertising campaigns. I respected that. Then he started playing dirty. Nothing dangerous. Jin wasn't a criminal mastermind. He was more like an irritated rich man with too much confidence. He booked every billboard near our highway exits so he couldn't advertise there. Unfortunately for him, his marketing agency accidentally uploaded the wrong image to one billboard. Instead of a Bright Kingdom advertisement, the screen displayed an internal comparison slide showing Wonder Whale Land had better social media engagement. Someone photographed it. The image went viral. Free advertising for us. Jin bought the online search ads for our park name. The ad platform suffered a temporary targeting glitch and displayed his Bright Kingdom ad above a search result that clearly said, "Looking for Wonder Whale Land? This isn't it." People shared screenshots because it looked desperate. More free advertising. Then he scheduled a huge summer event on the exact same weekend as ours. He hired a celebrity DJ, arranged fireworks, and planned a record-sized outdoor foam party. We couldn't compete with that budget. Toma suggested moving our event. I checked the weather forecast. Clear skies all weekend. I said keep the date. Saturday arrived. Bright Kingdom filled with guests. Our park did okay, but their event was clearly bigger. Then, at 3 p.m., a truck carrying concentrated bubble solution to Bright Kingdom took the wrong exit. The driver didn't crash. Nothing dangerous happened. He simply ended up at our service entrance and asked where to unload. Our staff told him he had the wrong park. He corrected the mistake and left. But one small container had leaked slightly inside the truck and dripped onto the road near our gate. A maintenance vehicle drove through it. The tires spread a thin layer of soap across a decorative plaza where our old fountain had recently been repaired. Then the fountain pumps turned on. The plaza filled with bubbles. Thousands of them. Kids screamed with happiness. Parents filmed everything. Visitors from nearby streets saw bubbles floating over the park and came to investigate. Within an hour, our accidental bubble fountain was trending locally. Meanwhile, Bright Kingdom's expensive foam machines failed because the delivery truck arrived late and one connector didn't fit their equipment. Jin's record foam party became a normal DJ event. Ours became the surprise bubble festival. I didn't even know we were having one. Jin declared war on me in an interview the next week. He said no one could be that lucky forever. I agreed with the first half. No normal person could. But I was approaching day 300, and whatever had happened to me on that first Monday morning had not slowed down. It had accelerated. I could feel it now. Not as a magical aura or a voice in my head. It was more like an instinct for where coincidence wanted to go. Sometimes I would see a dozen choices and one would feel slightly warmer, slightly funnier, slightly more interesting. I learned to follow that feeling. One afternoon, I walked into Wonder Whale Land and saw a maintenance cart with 3 paint cans. White, blue, and bright pink. The pink one felt interesting. I asked what it was for. A worker said it had been delivered by mistake. We had ordered gray. I told him not to return it yet. The next morning, a section of the park's old wooden boardwalk was damaged by a leaking sprinkler. We needed to replace several planks before an event. The only weather-resistant paint available on short notice happened to be that bright pink can. We painted the repair pink. Visitors loved the random stripe. They started taking photos standing on it, so we painted more stripes. Those became the pink paths, one of the park's signature attractions. People would follow them to discover hidden snack stands and tiny games. A delivery mistake became a design feature. That was how my companies operated now. We didn't eliminate errors. We watched them carefully. Because near me, errors had a habit of becoming doors. Jin did not understand that. He thought he could beat my luck by removing chance. So he challenged me to a contest he controlled completely. No random cards. No dice. No weather. No audience interference. A skill challenge. He had built a new indoor mini-golf course at Bright Kingdom and invited me to play 18 holes against him after closing time. Cameras would record everything. The course was climate-controlled. The equipment would be inspected. We would use identical clubs and balls. Jin had practiced the course for months. I had not played mini-golf since I was 12. He offered a ridiculous side bet. If he won, I had to wear a Bright Kingdom mascot costume at his park for 1 full day. If I won, he had to spend a day working at Wonder Whale Land in our whale mascot suit. Toma called it the most childish business dispute he had ever seen. I accepted immediately. The match began at midnight. Jin was excellent. First hole, 2 strokes. I took 3. Second hole, 2 strokes. I took 4 because my ball got trapped behind a plastic windmill. Jin smiled. He had finally found something luck couldn't solve because he had removed uncertainty. That was his mistake. Uncertainty is not something you can remove. You can only make it bored. On hole 5, Jin's perfect shot hit the edge of the cup and bounced out because a tiny piece of felt had lifted from the floor. On hole 6, my terrible shot struck a decorative pirate ship, rolled along the deck, fell down a fake cannon barrel, and emerged beside the hole. On hole 7, a motion-activated dragon was supposed to block the path every 6 seconds. Its sensor detected a moth and activated early, then reset exactly as my ball passed. Moths liked me now. By hole 10, we were tied. Jin started sweating. Hole 12 had a loop. I hit too softly. My ball climbed halfway, rolled backward, bumped Jin's ball before his turn. then settled into a drainage groove that carried it around the loop from the side and dropped it near the cup. The referee checked the course rules. The drainage groove was technically part of the playing surface. It counted. Jin looked like he wanted to eat the rulebook. The final hole was famous. A long straight ramp led toward 3 moving gates. Beyond them, the green sloped sharply around a model castle. The cup sat in a tiny courtyard. Jin went first. Perfect shot. Through all 3 gates. Around the castle. Stopped 6 centimeters from the cup. The camera zoomed in. He folded his arms. All I had to do was somehow beat nearly perfect. I lined up my shot. Then I deliberately turned sideways. Jin asked what I was doing. I said testing something. I hit the ball without looking. It went nowhere near the gates. Instead, it struck the wall. The ball bounced backward, hit the base of a decorative knight, and caused the knight's plastic sword to swing down. The sword tapped the ball. The ball rolled into a maintenance channel along the edge of the course. That channel sloped behind the castle. The ball disappeared. Everyone waited. A second later, it emerged through a tiny opening near the courtyard, rolled directly toward Jin's ball, bumped it 6 centimeters into the cup, then stopped beside it. For a moment, nobody knew what that meant. The referee checked. Jin's ball had been moved by mine before his next stroke, so it was replaced at its previous position. My ball was now closer. I tapped in. I won by 1 stroke. 3 days later, Jin wore the Wonder Whale mascot suit. He refused to dance. Then a group of children surrounded him and demanded the whale dance. He danced. And the video became our highest performing advertisement that month. Jin never challenged me to mini-golf again. I sent him a thank you card. He sent it back. The envelope contained a coupon for Bright Kingdom. I used it. I won a giant stuffed frog at one of his ring toss booths on my first try. I mailed him a picture. He blocked my number. Around day 320, I made a new rule. If an opportunity sounded completely unreasonable but harmless, I had to consider it seriously. That rule was responsible for the island. A travel company contacted me about sponsoring a promotional trip. They wanted me to spend 4 days at a newly renovated island resort, film some casual videos, and participate in a series of beach games. Toma liked the contract. I liked the phrase free buffet. Riku came because he said tropical environments contain many uncontrolled variables and therefore offered useful observation conditions. Hana came because somebody responsible needed to make sure I didn't buy the island. I promised not to buy the island. That promise became relevant later. Our flight was delayed before takeoff because a passenger's pet turtle escaped from its carrier and wandered under a row of seats. I knew immediately that something good was coming. Riku told me that was not how turtles worked. The delay caused us to miss our original connecting flight. The airline moved us to a later one and upgraded all 4 of us because the only remaining seats were in business class. In the lounge, I sat beside an older man eating a mountain of pudding cups. We started talking because he accidentally took mine. He apologized, handed it back unopened, and explained that he always ate pudding before flying because he hated airplane meals. His name was Daichi Kurobe. I had no idea who he was. Hana did. She nearly choked on her tea when she saw us talking. Kurobe owned one of the largest hotel management groups in the region. More importantly, his company was currently searching for small entertainment brands to partner with for family resorts. He recognized Wonder Whale Land after I showed him the mascot on my phone. He thought the whale's human shoes were hilarious. By the time we boarded, he had invited Toma to send him a partnership proposal. Riku wrote "turtle to pudding to hotel deal" in his notebook and underlined it 3 times. The island resort itself was beautiful. Clear water, white sand, palm trees, and enough decorative lanterns to make every path look like a wedding venue. The promotional games were harmless nonsense. Beach volleyball, coconut bowling, a treasure-digging contest for children, paddleboard races. I wasn't supposed to compete seriously. Then the resort manager mentioned an old local legend. Decades earlier, before the resort existed, a wealthy merchant supposedly buried a metal box somewhere on the island containing coins and letters meant for his descendants. People had searched for years and found nothing. Most locals assumed the story was exaggerated. I immediately wanted to look. Honey immediately reminded me I had actual sponsored activities to complete. So I behaved for almost 6 hours. After dinner, we walked along the beach. A crab emerged from the sand carrying what looked like a metal bottle cap. I followed it. Riku refused to follow because he said he had standards. Then another crab appeared with a similar piece of metal. Riku followed. The crabs crawled toward a rocky section of beach near an old stone wall. One disappeared into a gap. I shined my phone light inside. There was nothing dramatic. No skeleton, no treasure glow. Just sand, roots, and a rusted metal hinge sticking out of the dirt. We dug carefully with permission from the resort staff. 20 minutes later, we uncovered a small iron box. Everyone became very excited. The box was locked. The resort manager called local authorities because if it was historically important, we couldn't just smash it open. The next morning, an archivist arrived. The lock had corroded so badly that the keyhole was almost useless. While everyone discussed how to open it without damage, a maintenance worker walked past carrying a bucket of old keys found during renovation. One key fell out. It rolled across the floor. It stopped against my shoe. Nobody said anything. Riku looked physically tired. The key fit. Inside the box were old letters, several coins, and property documents connected to the merchant's family. It wasn't some giant pirate fortune, but historically it mattered. The resort turned the discovery into a small museum exhibit. The family descendants were contacted. The story made national news for a few days, and the travel company's promotional video received millions of views because apparently sending me anywhere now counted as an archaeological method. The resort manager offered me a permanent free suite if I promised to visit again. I accepted. I did not buy the island. Hana celebrated this as personal growth. Then Kurobe's hotel group partnered with Wonder Whale Land to create themed family rooms in 2 resorts. The rooms had whale-shaped beds for children and tiny Professor Probability plush sharks on the pillows. The shark merchandise sold out before the whale merchandise. I was betrayed again. The island trip should have convinced me to slow down. Instead, it gave me a worse idea. I wondered whether luck could affect skills I had never practiced, not by magically teaching me, but by arranging circumstances so that my terrible skills still produced a great result. A perfect opportunity appeared when a cooking show invited me as a celebrity guest. The format paired public figures with professional chefs. Normally, the chef did most of the real work while the guest chopped something safely and smiled at the camera. I asked the producers if I could compete alone. They thought I was joking. I was not. Toma asked whether I could cook. I said yes. He asked me to define cook. I said I had successfully made eggs many times. He put his forehead on the table. The episode became a special challenge. I would face 3 trained chefs. We would receive a mystery basket of ingredients and have 45 minutes to make a dish. The judges knew I was an amateur. I knew I was an amateur. The fire extinguisher knew I was an amateur. The basket opened. Inside were chicken thighs, mushrooms, green onions, rice, pears, yogurt, chili paste, and some kind of leafy herb I did not recognize. One chef immediately began deboning chicken with terrifying speed. Another started making a sauce. I stared at my ingredients and waited for destiny to write a recipe. Nothing happened, so I started cooking rice. That felt safe. I tried to cut the chicken and nearly sent one piece sliding off the board. It landed in a bowl of yogurt. I was about to remove it. Then the professional chef beside me glanced over and said yogurt could tenderize meat. I pretended that was intentional. I added chili paste. Then I reached for salt and grabbed sugar instead. I didn't notice until a large spoonful had already fallen into the marinade. I panicked. A pear rolled off my station, hit my foot, and split open because it was unusually ripe. I tasted it. Very sweet. That gave me an idea. If the marinade was already sweet, I could pretend the sweetness was a theme. I grated pear into it, added soy sauce, green onion, and the herb. The herb smelled citrusy. Good enough. Then my rice cooker malfunctioned. The lid wouldn't seal. Steam escaped everywhere. A producer offered to replace it, but competition rules required me to continue with my original equipment unless it became unsafe, so I put a heavy pan on top of the lid. The pan still contained mushrooms I had forgotten about. The steam heated them from underneath while they sat in butter. They slowly cooked in the warm pan without burning. I accidentally invented a 2-level cooking system. With 10 minutes left, my chicken looked too pale. I turned up the heat. The sauce reduced too quickly and became sticky. I thought I had ruined it. Then the sugar caramelized. The edges turned dark and glossy. It smelled incredible. The judges tasted everything. One chef made a flawless mushroom risotto with roasted chicken. Another made a sophisticated pear-glazed dish. The third did something involving foam that I still do not understand. My plate looked like food served by a very confident uncle at a barbecue. I expected last place, One judge took a bite, then another. They loved it. Apparently the yogurt and pear marinade made the chicken unusually tender. The sugar mistake created a caramelized crust. The mystery herb was a rare citrus herb that balanced the sweetness. The steamed mushrooms absorbed butter without drying out. I came second. I did not win. That result made me happier than most victories. Because my luck hadn't made me unbeatable. It had made my mistakes useful. The chef who beat me later offered to teach me actual cooking so I would stop terrifying professionals. I accepted. For several weeks, I became obsessed with intentional mistakes. Could I start with the wrong move and still arrive somewhere useful? I boarded the wrong train on purpose. It took me to a neighborhood where a street market was holding a one-day auction. I bought an old arcade cabinet for almost nothing because I liked the artwork. Inside the cabinet, technicians later found prototype hardware from a famous game company that collectors considered extremely rare. I walked into the wrong meeting room at a conference. Instead of our advertising discussion, I entered a seminar for reusable packaging startups. I stayed because leaving immediately felt rude. One presenter had invented edible spoons that actually tasted good. Fortunate error invested. 6 months later, a major festival banned disposable plastic cutlery and ordered hundreds of thousands of them. I selected the wrong file during a presentation and accidentally showed Keto a photo of Toma asleep on a beanbag beside stacks of umbrella boxes. Keto laughed and approved our budget anyway because he said a company where the manager could sleep beside inventory was probably working hard. Toma banned me from controlling slides. The mistake experiment reached its peak when I entered a navigation rally. The event was designed for teams driving tiny electric carts through a closed resort property. The goal was to visit checkpoints in the shortest total distance. We received a map, but several roads were unmarked, and teams had to choose routes carefully. I partnered with Riku. He wanted to prove planning could outperform luck. For the first 20 minutes, he navigated perfectly. We hit every checkpoint with almost no wasted distance. Then I took the map. At the next intersection, I deliberately turned opposite the marked route. Riku asked what I was doing. I said research. He said research needed consent from everyone in the vehicle. We drove down a narrow service road that appeared to lead nowhere. At the end, we found a gate. Locked. Riku folded his arms. Then a groundskeeper arrived from the other side, opened it, and waved us through because he assumed we were event staff. The gate connected directly to checkpoint 6, skipping a huge loop. Riku went quiet. At the next fork, I chose a road labeled deliveries only. It ended behind a kitchen. A delivery truck blocked us. Riku smiled. Then the truck driver moved because he had parked in the wrong loading bay. Behind him was a shortcut to checkpoint 7. By the final checkpoint, we had saved nearly 2 kilometers. We won the rally. Riku announced afterward that the experiment proved nothing except that resort signage was terrible. I bought him a trophy that said "World's Unluckiest Skeptic." He threw it away. The trash collector recognized him from television and asked for a photo with it. The picture went viral. He stopped throwing away my gifts. By day 350, people began challenging me from all over the world. Not serious gamblers only. Regular people sent ridiculous ideas. Pick a random book and open directly to a page containing the word penguin. Throw a paperclip into a coffee mug from across a gym. Choose which elevator will contain someone wearing red shoes. Guess which vending machine will give 2 drinks. Call a random number and somehow reach someone named Yugi. I refused anything unsafe, illegal, cruel, or financially stupid for other people. But harmless nonsense? I loved harmless nonsense. We created a weekly live stream called Yugi vs. Probability. Toma hated the title because he said it sounded like a children's educational program. That made me like it more. The first episode had me choose one of 5,000 rubber ducks floating in a temporary pool. One duck had a gold star underneath. I chose a duck. No star. The audience gasped because people had become so used to me winning that failure felt shocking. I laughed and held up the losing duck. Then its head fell off. Inside was a tiny gold-colored manufacturing pin. That did not count. Even I admitted it. I chose a second duck. Still no star. Third duck. Nothing. Riku looked happier with every miss. Fourth duck. Gold star. The audience exploded. I had needed 4 tries, which was still absurdly lucky but not perfect. That taught us something else. My luck was not a command. It was pressure. The more days passed, the stronger the pressure became. but probability could still resist for a while. That made me wonder what would happen if I pushed against something truly enormous. Not dangerous, just almost impossible. So for the next episode, Natsume proposed a challenge with odds so ridiculous that Riku refused to calculate them on camera because he said the number would look fake. The setup used a stadium. At one end, a machine would launch 100 colored balls high into the air at random angles. I would stand 50 meters away with one empty bucket. Before launch, a computer would secretly choose one ball color and one exact numbered ball within that color. I would not know either. My goal was to catch that specific ball. I wasn't allowed to move more than 3 steps after the balls launched. There were 2,000 possible balls in the machine, and the wind would make their paths chaotic. Even if I stood in the right general area, catching one exact ball in a bucket was ridiculous. The day of the challenge arrived. The stadium roof was open. Wind speed was low. Natsume inspected the launch system. Riku inspected Natsume inspecting the launch system. Toma inspected the insurance documents. Professor Probability wore a tiny stadium credential. I stood on the field holding the bucket. The computer selected the target. The launch machine fired. 2,000 balls erupted into the air like colorful hail. I had no idea where to look. I took one step left, then another. Balls bounced everywhere. One hit my shoulder. One landed in the bucket and bounced out. One struck Professor Probability, who was sitting safely near Toma, and knocked his sunglasses crooked. The crowd roared. I saw a red ball coming toward me. I moved my bucket. It missed. The target ball had probably already landed somewhere else. Then a stadium gust caught several balloons from a sponsor display. The balloons pulled loose and drifted over the field. One ribbon snagged a ball that was still bouncing. The ball lifted slightly, dragged several meters, then dropped. It struck another ball. That ball hit a third. The third rolled down a painted drainage slope toward me. I held the bucket near the ground. The ball rolled inside. The stadium went silent. I looked down. Blue ball. Number 417. The computer revealed the target. Blue Quadracientus Dithesieta. I don't remember the next 10 seconds clearly because the noise was too loud. Riku sat down on the grass. Natsume ran in circles. Toma just stared at me. I stared at the ball. For the first time, I felt something more than excitement. I felt challenged, because catching that ball should have been almost impossible, and reality had still found a path. So I wanted to know what happened when there was no path at all. The problem with finding something that had literally no path to success was that every time we designed one, Riku found a technical loophole. If I tried to roll a 7 on a normal 6-sided die, maybe the die could crack and pieces could show 7 pips in total. If I tried to draw an ace from a deck with all 4 aces removed, maybe another card could have an ace printed accidentally on the back. If I tried to choose a winning ball that wasn't inside a lottery machine, maybe the missing ball could fall from somebody's pocket. My luck had taught us to think like annoying lawyers. So Riku built a test he believed was airtight. He took a brand new 6-sided die and had it scanned, weighed, photographed, and sealed inside a transparent acrylic chamber. I could not touch the die. A robotic arm would roll it when I pressed a button. I had to predict 7. Not a sum. Not a broken die. Not a tilted result. The upper face had to show 7 pips. A 6-sided die did not have a 7-pip face. Therefore, success was impossible. Toma asked why we were wasting electricity on this. Riku said because he wanted one normal afternoon. We set up cameras. I pressed the button. The robot rolled the die. It bounced twice. 6. Riku spread his arms as if he had personally defeated the universe. Then one of the overhead camera monitors froze. On the frozen image, the die appeared beside a reflection of one ceiling light. 6 pips on the face, one bright reflected dot beside them. Visually, 7. Riku said absolutely not. I agreed. That was not the stated condition. The die itself still showed 6, for once. Reality had made a joke but failed the test. Riku reset the machine. Second roll. 5. Third roll. 2. Fourth roll. 6 again. I began to grin. My luck could not create a face that did not exist. That was useful. There were boundaries. Then the acrylic chamber made a small cracking sound. Everyone froze. A screw in the robotic arm had loosened. When the arm reset, it clipped the edge of the chamber. Nothing dangerous. Just a tiny stress fracture. The test was paused. A technician removed the chamber to inspect it. While lifting it, he noticed something underneath the die platform. A small white sticker. It had fallen from the equipment serial label during assembly. Printed on the sticker was one black dot from a larger calibration symbol. The sticker had attached itself to the bottom of the die. We had never seen it because the die had been sitting on that face during inspection. The technician turned the die over. The original face showed 6 pips. The sticker added one more black dot. 7. Riku stared at the modified face. I stared at Riku. He pointed out that the test had been paused before another roll. I agreed. So we carefully replaced the die, now with the accidental dot still attached, resealed the chamber, and rolled again. The die landed with the altered 6 face upward. 7 visible pips. Riku left the room. This time he did not come back for 9 minutes. I learned 2 things. First, my luck couldn't instantly violate physical reality. Second, physical reality contains so many tiny loopholes that this limitation was almost useless. That made my challenges much more creative. Instead of asking, "Can I do the impossible?" I started asking, "How badly can I define the impossible before reality finds a technicality?" That became the most popular segment on our live stream. I bet I could make a paper airplane stay in the air for 5 minutes indoors. The plane flew for 12 seconds, landed on top of a cleaning robot, and rode around the studio for the remaining time, while a judge argued that stay in the air clearly meant not touch the ground. The robot climbed a ramp and briefly lifted the plane every few seconds. After a 20-minute rules dispute, we declared it a draw. I bet I could score a goal without the soccer ball ever touching the field. I kicked it too high. It landed on the roof of a slow-moving maintenance cart, rolled across the roof, bounced off a hanging banner, struck the crossbar, and went in. The ball had touched a cart, banner, and goal, but never the field. That counted. I bet I could make a sandwich without touching any ingredient with my hands. A cooking robot malfunctioned halfway through and launched a tomato slice at my face. I dodged. The tomato landed perfectly on the bread. The clip was used in the robot company's advertising after they fixed the launcher. The more absurd I became, the more invitations arrived. Most went into a folder labeled, "Probably Nonsense." Then one arrived on heavy black paper with a silver edge. No company logo, no sponsor, just a location, a date, and one sentence. "Come bet on things money cannot buy." Sato hated it immediately. Toma hated it after reading the liability waiver. Riku loved it because he thought it was either a fraud or an interesting fraud. The location was a private luxury train called the Meridian, which operated special invitation-only journeys for wealthy collectors, professional gamblers, puzzle designers, and people with hobbies that apparently required velvet curtains. The event was called the Long Odds Salon. It wasn't illegal gambling. Most bets were for objects, favors, trophies, access, or ridiculous dares. The rules specifically prohibited betting essential property, dangerous acts, or anything involving coercion. That sounded safer than several television shows I had already appeared on, so I boarded. The Meridian looked like a casino had married a museum. Polished wood, brass lamps, private booths, dining cars, observation decks. Every corridor smelled expensive. The guests were even stranger. A mathematician who collected antique dice. A retired tennis champion who had bet on anything involving bouncing objects. A tech founder who carried 3 decks of cards and refused to explain why. A woman famous for winning high-level memory competitions. A magician who claimed he had never gambled with his own money because that would make the trick less fun. And, sitting alone at a table near the rear observation window, a man named Seiji Kuroda. Everybody knew him. I did not. Toma whispered that Kuroda was a legendary private bettor. Not because he won massive sums, but because he designed wagers so psychologically nasty that opponents defeated themselves. He was famous for choosing games where the odds looked simple while the real challenge was confidence. Kuroda greeted me like he had been waiting. He said he had watched my videos. I said I was sorry. He didn't laugh. That told me everything I needed to know. The first salon game was harmless. 10 sealed boxes sat on a table. 9 contained silver coins. 1 contained a gold coin. We each selected a box. If you found gold, you earned a gold token that could be exchanged for 1 favor from another participant, provided the favor was legal and reasonable. I selected box 4, silver. Kuroda selected box 9, gold. He looked at me. I smiled. People had become so obsessed with my luck that they forgot I could lose. Kuroda did not. The second game involved guessing which of 20 wind-up toy birds would travel farthest across a table. I chose a crooked blue bird missing one painted eye. Kuroda chose a sleek red one. They were wound equally and released. My blue bird turned in a circle. Kuroda's red bird shot forward. Then it hit a loose thread from the tablecloth and tipped over. My blue bird continued circling, slowly drifting forward each lap. It crossed the finish line last in time, but farthest in distance, because every other bird had stopped sooner. I won. Kuroda's expression did not change. The third game was his idea. He placed 2 identical glasses of water on a table. He put 1 sugar cube into 1 glass while I looked away, then stirred until it dissolved. I had to choose the sweet water without tasting, touching, smelling closely, or inspecting with equipment. Pure guess. I chose the left glass. Wrong. Kuroda smiled slightly. Then a waiter passing behind us stumbled when the train entered a curve. He caught himself, but his tray tilted. A lemon slice fell into the left glass. Now both glasses were flavored, but mine contained lemon rather than sugar. I had still lost. I laughed. Kuroda watched me carefully. That was the real test. He wanted to see whether losing bothered me. It didn't. I had never believed luck meant perfection. Luck was only interesting because failure still existed. By dinner, Kuroda had challenged me to 7 small games. I won 4. He won 3. That was much closer than anyone expected. Riku was thrilled. He started treating Kuroda like a scientific instrument. Then Kuroda proposed a final wager. No money. If he won, I would appear on his private strategy show and publicly admit that his prediction system had beaten my luck. If I won, he would spend 1 week consulting for fortunate error on any ridiculous project I chose. I accepted. The game looked simple. There were 3 locked briefcases. Red, white, and black. One contained a brass bell. The other 2 were empty. A staff member randomly placed the bell while both of us were outside the car, and the cases were locked and rearranged. I would choose first. Kuroda would choose one of the remaining 2. The third would be discarded. If my case had the bell, I won. If Kuroda's had it, he won. If the discarded case had it, we repeated. Basic probability. I chose red. Kuroda chose black. The white case was discarded. The staff opened red. Empty. Kuroda's black case remained closed. He already knew what that meant unless the staff had made a mistake. He put his hand on the lock, and the train entered a tunnel. The lights flickered. When they came back, we heard a faint ringing sound. Not from the black case. From under the table. Everyone looked down. The brass bell was rolling across the carpet. The staff member turned pale. We opened all 3 cases. Empty. Somehow, the bell had fallen through a tear in the lining of the white case, slipped through a gap near the hinge, and dropped out after the case had been discarded under the table. Technically, neither selected case contained it. Repeat. Kuroda finally laughed. Not a polite smile. A real laugh. He admitted that he had designed hundreds of games and had never seen a prize escape the game itself. Second round. New bell. New cases. New inspection. I chose white. Kuroda chose red. Black discarded. White opened. Bell. I won. Kuroda joined fortunate error for 1 week. I assigned him to our most important project, designing a claw machine that was actually fair. He thought I was insulting him. I was completely serious. Claw machines had been my first real impossible challenge. I wanted one where skill mattered, prizes were achievable, and the machine didn't secretly weaken its grip. Kuroda spent 4 days arguing with engineers about tension settings. The result was excellent. We installed 50 fair claws at Wonder Whale Land. People loved them because losing felt like their own fault instead of corporate betrayal. Jin Moriyama visited in disguise to inspect one. His disguise was sunglasses and a hat. He was still wearing a Bright Kingdom staff jacket. We pretended not to recognize him. He won a Professor Probability plush on his 3rd try. A visitor photographed him holding it. The picture went viral. I mailed him a frame. He unblocked my number just to tell me to stop. By then, day 360 was approaching. 1 full year. That mattered to me. I had started as a guy happy to find 2 coins on a bus. And now I owned part of an umbrella company, an amusement park, stakes in robot footwear and landscaping goats, a media channel, and enough Professor Probability merchandise to build a second office entirely from plush sharks. But none of that answered the question that had been bothering me since the beginning. Why 1%? Why every day? And what happened after a year? I didn't expect fireworks. I didn't expect a magical system message. Still, I decided to celebrate day 365 with one challenge so ridiculous that it could only belong to me. Natsume designed it. Riku audited it. Toma ensured it. Hana threatened everyone involved. The challenge was called the 1,000-Step Bet. I would start at sunrise at one end of Wonder Whale Land with no money, no phone, no prepared tools, and no assistance from my staff. My goal was to reach the old whale fountain by sunset carrying 5 specific objects I did not own at the start. A red balloon, a silver spoon, a ticket dated that exact day, a toy crown, and a lemon. That sounded easy until the restrictions were added. I could not buy anything. I could not ask anyone directly for any of the objects. I could not enter any shop I owned. I could not tell strangers about the challenge. I could only walk exactly 1,000 steps total. The final fountain was 972 normal steps from the starting point. That left 28 extra steps for every detour. I had to somehow collect all 5 objects almost directly along the route. The objects were chosen randomly at midnight and kept secret from me until sunrise, so nobody could prepare them. It was stupid. Perfect. At sunrise, I opened the envelope. Red balloon, silver spoon, today's ticket, toy crown, lemon. I took my first step. The first 100 steps gave me nothing. That was expected. I walked along the park's main boulevard while cameras followed from a distance. Visitors had been told only that filming was happening, not what I needed. Step 117. A child ran past holding 3 balloons. One was red. My brain immediately screamed opportunity. But I couldn't ask for it. I kept walking. The child tripped. I moved to help, then stopped myself because reaching him would cost too many steps. His father caught him before he fell. One balloon string slipped free. The red balloon floated upward. I watched it rise. Gone. Riku, standing behind the camera boundary, smiled like probability had finally developed self-respect. Then the balloon snagged on a low tree branch ahead of me, exactly on my route. I walked beneath it at step 143. A gust shook the branch. The string dropped over my shoulder. I caught it without changing direction. Red balloon acquired. The crowd following from outside the challenge lane cheered. 4 objects left. At step 200, I passed a picnic area. People were eating breakfast from food stalls. Silver spoons everywhere. But I could not enter a shop, buy one, or ask. A woman dropped a spoon? It landed behind me. Useless. A man placed another on a table 2 meters off my route. Too far. A toddler held one out toward me for no reason. Tempting, but accepting it might count as indirect asking because I was staring at it like a starving raccoon. I kept moving. At step 268, a waiter carrying a tray crossed ahead. 1 spoon slid toward the edge. I braced for destiny. The waiter caught it. Rude. Then he noticed a different spoon on the ground near my foot, picked it up, decided it was dirty, and tossed it into a nearby recycling bin. The spoon hit the rim. It bounced out. It landed directly in the hood of my jacket. I froze. The challenge judge checked the replay. I had not asked for it. I had not left the route. The waiter no longer wanted it. Silver spoon acquired. Riku looked at the sky as if asking for patience. Step 350. I needed a ticket dated that day. Wonder Whale Land used digital entry for most guests, so paper tickets were uncommon. I passed a prize booth where old-style tickets were used for games, but entering it would violate the rule against my own shops. I kept walking. A maintenance employee approached from the opposite direction carrying a trash bag. I couldn't ask him for anything. The bag tore. Of course it did. Receipts, wrappers, and scraps of paper spilled across the path. The employee apologized and started cleaning. 1 paper ticket stuck to the bottom of my shoe. I waited until he finished. He didn't notice it. I lifted my foot carefully. The ticket was from a train station, not the park. Printed date. That morning. Apparently a visitor had dropped it earlier. Today's ticket acquired. I was starting to think the challenge was too easy. Then I went 400 steps without finding anything else. The toy crown became the problem. The lemon was common. Food stalls used lemons. Drinks had lemon slices. Someone could drop one. Toy crowns were different. Wonder Whale Land did not sell them. We had whale hats, shark sunglasses, pirate bandanas, and one deeply unpopular squid helmet, but no crowns. At step 790, I had only 210 steps left. The fountain was about 180 steps away. I could afford 30 steps of movement beyond the direct route. I saw no crown, no lemon either. For the first time that day, I wondered if the one-year challenge would end in failure. Then I heard music, a birthday song. A family was celebrating at an outdoor table beside the path. The birthday girl wore a paper crown, not a toy crown. Wrong object. I kept moving. The family opened a box containing party favors, tiny plastic crowns. There it was, but I couldn't ask. I walked past. Behind me, I heard the birthday girl laugh. One of the plastic crowns had been placed on a small dog. The dog did not appreciate royalty. It shook its head. The crown flew forward. It landed on the pavement ahead of me. The dog chased it. The dog reached it before I did. It grabbed the crown and ran. Wrong direction. I nearly shouted, and the red balloon tied to my wrist drifted low. The dog saw it. Dogs apparently respect balloons more than monarchy. It turned around and ran toward me, crown still in its mouth. Its owner called it back. The dog stopped beside my leg, dropped the crown, and barked at the balloon. I picked up the crown. The owner said I could keep it because the dog had already chewed one edge. Toy crown acquired. One object left. A lemon. I had 96 steps remaining. The fountain was 91 steps away. 5 spare steps. I walked. 80 remaining. No lemon. 60. No lemon. 40. I passed a drink cart. The cart was ours, so I couldn't enter or take anything. A clear container on the counter held lemon slices, not whole lemons. The rule said a lemon. I kept walking. 20 steps. The fountain was directly ahead. Nothing. 15. 10. At 8 steps remaining, I stopped. The crowd fell silent. If I continued to the fountain, I would finish without the lemon. If I left the route, I only had 5 spare steps. There was nowhere useful within 5 steps. Riku crossed his arms. Natsume stared at the ground. Toma looked more nervous than he had during some of our largest investments. I looked at the red balloon, the silver spoon, the train ticket, the chewed toy crown. 4 out of 5. Then something hit the pavement beside me. A lemon, a whole lemon. It bounced once, rolled, stopped against my shoe. Nobody moved. I slowly looked up. A seagull flew overhead. Apparently it had stolen the lemon from somewhere in the park, discovered that lemons are terrible bird food, and dropped it at the exact moment it passed above me. The crowd lost its mind. I picked up the lemon. 8 steps later, I reached the fountain. Exactly 1,000 steps, 5 objects. Before sunset, day 365. I climbed onto the edge of the fountain and held the lemon over my head like I had just conquered a kingdom using citrus. That should have been the perfect ending to my first year. It wasn't, because when the celebration ended and everyone went home, I stayed at the park alone for a while. The lights reflected on the water. The old whale statue towered above me wearing those ridiculous human shoes. Professor Probability sat beside me on the fountain wall. I thought about the first coin on the bus. 1% luckier every day. 365 days. If the effect really compounded, then I wasn't just a little luckier anymore. I was dozens of times luckier than the person who had started. And tomorrow would add another 1%. Then another. Then another. The scary part wasn't that my luck might stop. The scary part was that it showed no sign of stopping. I went home. I slept. I woke up on day 366 because a sound came from my kitchen. I grabbed the nearest object, which, unfortunately, was Professor Probability. I entered the kitchen using a plush shark as a weapon. My toaster had turned itself on. I hadn't put bread in it. I stared. 2 seconds later, the toaster popped. A folded piece of paper flew out. I caught it. For a full 10 seconds, I could not understand what I was looking at. Then I realized the paper was a restaurant coupon I had lost months earlier. It must have slipped behind the toaster somehow. Heat from the appliance had created airflow, lifting it into the slot, and the spring mechanism had launched it. The coupon was still valid. Free breakfast. I laughed so hard I had to sit down. Day 366 had begun by shooting a coupon at me. Maybe nothing had changed. Then I checked my phone. 37 missed messages. Most were from Toma. One of our smallest investments had just received a huge acquisition offer. Which investment? The philosopher-shaped square watermelons, the only red sticker on our wall. The company had pivoted. Instead of selling expensive novelty fruit, it had developed reusable molds for farms to shape produce for easier packing. A major grocery distributor wanted the patent. My only losing investment had become profitable while I slept. I stared at the message. Then I looked at Professor Probability. The last red sticker was gone. That felt different. For the first year, I could still lose sometimes. Maybe day 366 had pushed me over some invisible line. I needed to test it immediately. I called Riku. He answered with the exhausted voice of a man who regretted giving me his number. An hour later, we met at the office. I told him I wanted 10 random tests. No preparation. He used whatever was nearby. Guess which hand held a coin? Correct. Choose the longest pencil from a cup without looking. Correct. Call the next elevator. Correct. Predict whether Toma would enter carrying coffee or tea. Coffee. Predict how many emails would arrive in the next minute. I guessed 9. 8 arrived. Riku smiled. Then Toma forwarded one old message at the final second. 9. We tried cards. Dice. Random numbers. I kept winning. 20 tests. 30. 40. Riku's smile disappeared. At test 48, he told me to choose one of 2 identical sealed envelopes. He had prepared them months earlier for a completely unrelated experiment. One contained a blank page. The other contained a drawing of a fish. I chose the left. Fish. Test 49. He opened a random number generator on an offline laptop and asked me to predict the next digit from 0 to 9. I chose 4. 4. Test 50. He put a trash can in the corner and handed me a crumpled paper ball. I had to throw it backward over my shoulder from across the office. I threw. The paper hit a ceiling fan. The fan launched it across the room. It bounced off the door just as Hana entered, landed on a folder she was carrying, slid off the folder, and dropped into the trash can. Hana stared at all of us. She asked whether this was work. Toma said no. I said yes. Riku said he no longer knew. I went 50 for 50. That should have made me happy. Instead, it made me restless. Perfect luck sounded amazing until you realized games were only fun because losing was possible. So I decided to find something I could still lose. For 1 week, I became a menace to common sense. I entered a carnival ring toss and threw the ring with my eyes closed. It bounced off 2 bottles and landed perfectly around a third. I tried bowling by rolling the ball between my legs backward. The ball entered the wrong lane, struck a maintenance bumper, crossed through a gap near the pin setter, returned into my lane from behind, and knocked down all 10 pins in a way the bowling alley manager described as deeply upsetting. I picked a random stock by throwing a dart at a newspaper. The dart hit an advertisement instead of the financial page. The company in the advertisement announced a surprise merger 2 days later. I ordered the least popular dish at a tiny restaurant. A famous food critic walked in. Ordered the same dish because he saw mine, loved it, and wrote a glowing review. The restaurant became booked for weeks, and the owner offered me free meals. I joined a neighborhood raffle where the grand prize was a rice cooker. There were 6,000 tickets. I bought one. I already owned 3 rice cookers because brands kept sending them to me. I donated it. Then the charity held another raffle with a donated cooker, and somehow Toma won it. He blamed me. I started making bets specifically against myself. I told Riku I bet I could not flip 10 heads in a row. The coin landed heads 10 times. I technically lost the bet, which meant my prediction was wrong, but the physical luck succeeded. That created a philosophical argument so annoying that we stopped using self-contradicting bets. I tried choosing the worst-looking horse in a small race. The horse won because the favorite got distracted by a butterfly. When I heard that, I immediately checked the horse's name. Not Mayonnaise Meteor. Different horse. Apparently butterflies simply had influence in racing. I tried entering a speed-eating contest despite being a slow eater. The contest was cancelled because the sponsor accidentally delivered miniature buns instead of normal ones. They changed the rules to most buns eaten by count. I won with what was basically one normal sandwich divided into 20 pieces. I entered a paper, rock, scissors tournament and announced all my choices in advance. My opponents kept changing their minds at the last second and choosing the losing option. One contestant sneezed during his throw and accidentally changed scissors into paper. I won the tournament. The prize was another stuffed shark. Professor Probability gained an assistant. I named him Dr. Coincidence. Toma refused to put him on payroll. By day 380, I had reached a strange point. I wasn't trying to make money anymore. I wasn't trying to prove myself. I was trying to surprise my own luck. That was much harder. Natsume loved the challenge and built increasingly ridiculous machines. One required me to launch a marble through a maze while the maze rotated randomly. The marble got stuck to a magnet nobody remembered installing. The magnet moved with a maintenance arm and carried it to the finish. Another required me to catch a falling feather in a bottle from 10 meters away. The feather missed me, landed on a drone, rode the drone during a camera reposition, then fell into my bottle when the drone passed overhead. Riku inspected the drone for an hour. Nothing was rigged. Kuroda returned voluntarily because he said my existence had become more interesting than normal work. Emi visited too. She had completed Natsume's 10,000 switch room in 12 attempts, which was impressive enough to make Riku develop a headache. We formed a strange little group around impossible games. Natsume built them. Riku audited them. Kuroda found strategic weaknesses. Emi guessed things. Toma complained about the budget. Hana made sure nobody set anything on fire. I ruined probability. It was the best job I had ever had. Then Jin Moriyama returned with his most desperate plan yet. He announced a new Bright Kingdom attraction called the Unlucky Zone. The entire area was designed around bad luck jokes, crooked carnival games, fake banana peels, a restaurant where desserts arrived in deliberately mismatched dishes, and a maze where signs gave useless directions. His marketing campaign claimed even Yugi couldn't stay lucky inside. He invited me to the opening. I had to respect the commitment. I went. The entrance gate malfunctioned and printed me 1,000 prize tickets instead of one. Jin nearly cried. I gave them back. The first attraction was a spinning wheel with 99 losing spaces and 1 winning space. I spun. Winning space. The second was a mystery box machine, where 1 in 500 boxes contained a premium prize. I picked one. Premium prize. The third was a crooked basketball hoop designed to make shots bounce out. My ball got stuck between the rim and backboard. A second ball from another guest hit it. Both went in. Jin walked away. I followed because technically he was giving me the tour. At the maze, every sign pointed the wrong way on purpose. I followed all of them. A maintenance door had been left open by mistake. I exited in 47 seconds. The advertised average was 18 minutes. Jin sat on a decorative, unlucky black cat statue and stared into space. I bought him lunch. To his credit, he finally surrendered. Not his business. Just the war against my luck. He admitted competing with me was exhausting because every attack became marketing for me. I offered him a partnership instead. Bright Kingdom had modern rides. Wonder Whale Land had retro charm. We could sell combined passes and run shuttle buses between both parks. He agreed after pretending to think about it for 3 days. The partnership doubled both parks' attendance that season. Even my enemy became lucky by standing near me. That was another new development. My luck seemed to splash. Toma won random coupons constantly. Hana's delayed shipments began arriving early because other companies canceled warehouse slots. Riku found a rare out-of-print statistics book in a box somebody left beside a recycling center. Kuroda won a restaurant reservation lottery he had forgotten entering. Natsume's prototype machines failed in useful ways that revealed design flaws before production. People around me did better. Not always. Toma still spilled coffee on himself regularly. Riku still lost his keys. Jin still picked terrible neckties. But the pattern was there. My 1% wasn't staying inside me anymore. Reality was starting to treat my entire orbit as favored territory. That should have been comforting. Instead, it created a new question. If luck could spread outward, could something else spread inward? I got the answer on day 391. A plain envelope appeared on my desk. No stamp. No courier label. Nobody in the office knew who delivered it. Security cameras showed a cleaning cart passing my door at 11:14 a.m. The envelope was not on the desk before the cart passed. It was there afterward. The cleaner denied leaving it. We checked the cart. Nothing unusual. Riku immediately became interested. Sato immediately became annoyed. I opened the envelope. Inside was one black playing card. It looked like the back of a normal card, except there was no pattern, just matte black. On the front was a white circle. Inside the circle was the number 0. Beneath it, in tiny letters, were 6 words. Bet on what cannot happen. There was also an address, an old commercial building downtown, and a time, midnight. That night, Toma told me not to go. Sato told me definitely not to go. Hana told me if I went, I was bringing people. Riku was already putting on his coat. So at 11:50 p.m., the 4 of us stood outside the address. The building looked empty. No sign. No lights except one above a side entrance. I tried the door. Locked. Riku looked at me. I looked at the black card. A taxi drove past and splashed through a shallow puddle. The water hit a loose electrical box beside the door. The box sparked. The electronic lock clicked open. Toma closed his eyes. He said this was exactly the kind of thing he hated. We entered. Inside was a clean hallway that looked nothing like the abandoned exterior. At the end stood an elevator. 1 button. No number. I pressed it. The doors opened. Inside, the floor display showed only a minus sign. We stepped in. The elevator descended, and kept descending long enough for Toma to ask whether underground construction permits could be checked retroactively. Finally, the doors opened. A circular room waited beyond them. White walls, black floor, one long table. At the far end sat a young woman about my age. She wore a gray hoodie, sneakers, and the bored expression of someone waiting for laundry. No guards, no dramatic music, no rich gamblers in masks, just her. On the table between us sat a coin standing perfectly upright on its edge, not spinning, standing. That alone was weird enough. Then the woman flicked the table with one finger. The coin fell. It landed tails. She flipped it. Tails. Again. Tails. 10 times. 20. Every flip. Tails. Riku moved closer. The woman pushed the coin toward him. He inspected it. Normal coin. He flipped it. Heads. The woman took it back. Tails. I felt something I had not felt in months. A cold little spark of uncertainty. She looked at me and finally smiled. She said her name was Nami. Then she told me something that made Riku stop breathing for a second. Every day, she became 1% unluckier. I thought she was joking. Then a ceiling light above her burned out. A glass of water beside her tipped for no reason. But instead of spilling on her, it rolled off the table, hit a floor outlet, triggered a tiny breaker, and shut off the room lights. Emergency lighting came on. Nami sighed like this happened constantly. She explained that her bad luck had started almost the same time my good luck had. At first she lost coins, missed buses, dropped food, and always chose the slow line. Then it worsened. Reservations disappeared from systems. Winning tickets turned out to be printing errors. Umbrellas broke during storms. Every machine she used seemed to find the one defective component. But she had learned something I hadn't. Bad luck could be useful. If she wanted a locked door to fail, it failed. If she wanted a complicated plan to collapse, something usually collapsed. If she entered a contest where losing created a better side effect, she could weaponize the loss. She didn't win. She made winning irrelevant. I loved the idea immediately. Toma whispered that I was not allowed to hire her yet. Nami pushed the black card toward me. She had invited me because her bad luck had been getting stronger too. And lately, something strange happened whenever she watched my videos. Her bad luck weakened. At the same time, she suspected my luck became slightly less perfect. Riku asked for evidence. Nami pointed at the coin. She said there was one test. Simple. I flipped the coin. She calls tails. I call heads. My luck pushes one way. Her misfortune pushes the other. We see what happens. I sat across from her. For the first time in almost 400 days, a 50-50 bet made my heart pound. I picked up the coin. It felt completely ordinary. Nami called tails. I called heads. Riku turned on 3 cameras. Toma stood by the elevator as if preparing to leave the moment probability exploded. Hana crossed her arms. I flipped. The coin rose, spun, hit the table, bounced once. Then, unbelievably, it landed on its edge. Perfectly upright. Nobody spoke. Heads on one side, tails on the other. Neither of us had won. Neither of us had lost. Nami's smile widened. Then the coin started rolling, still upright. It rolled down the length of the table, curved around a glass, passed between Riku's fingers when he tried to stop it, reached the edge, and fell. We all leaned over. It never hit the floor. A tiny ventilation grate beneath the table had come loose. The coin slipped through the gap and vanished into the duct. From somewhere inside the wall came a metallic clink, then another, then a much louder mechanical sound. The room shook. A section of the opposite wall slowly opened. Behind it was another room, much larger. Rows of strange machines stood in darkness. 100 tables, thousands of numbered balls, wheels, cards, dice, robotic arms, sealed boxes, rotating platforms, and devices I couldn't even identify. At the center, a giant display flickered on. One line appeared. Probability conflict detected. A second line followed. Calibration incomplete. Then a third. Participant count 2. I looked at Nami. Nami looked at me. Riku made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a nervous cough. Toma said we were absolutely not touching anything. At that exact moment, one machine in the dark powered on by itself. A transparent chamber lit up. Inside were 1 million tiny white balls. One ball was black. A mechanical voice announced a test. The rules were simple. Choose one ball. Nami stood beside me, the unluckiest person I had ever met. I was almost 400 days into becoming luckier. One black ball waited among a million white ones. And for the first time since my life started bending around me, I had absolutely no idea whether I wanted to win. I grinned anyway. Because if reality thought one impossible bet could scare Yugi away, then reality clearly hadn't been paying attention.